In this video, we're going to be discussing, are cat filters worth the extra money, and are their design differences worth the extra money? Well, I'm going to be making the case that they are, and here's a non-cat filter, and this is not what you want to happen. Hey guys, this is Josh with the Adept Ape channel, and in this video we're going to be discussing, are cat filters worth the money? Now what do I mean by worth the money? They're typically more expensive than all their competitors. Even cat dealers typically carry a filter brand that isn't cat. Our dealership carries Donaldson to fit pretty much all the engine applications or hydraulic applications or whatever the filter's for, fuel filters, air filters, because cat filters are more expensive, and some people think that a cheaper filter over the life of the engine is going to save them a lot of money. Well, ask yourself this question: what is the filter for? It's there to protect more expensive components. So if you're saving $5 or $10 every 3 months, is that worth possibly less filter efficiency and possibly a less safe filter? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to get into kind of some of the features that cat filters have that the other filter brands out there either don't have, or they have it in a much less robust manner, okay? So we're going to be talking about cat filters today. So if you walk into most cat dealers, they're going to have a filter cutaway display. This dealer has this cutaway. You can see the cat on the right. You can see a Baldwin next to it. There's a couple others. Looks like a Napa. There's a Donaldson on the end. And just looking at it, it looks like the filter element itself is pretty similar, but there's a lot of differences between these filters that if you know what you're looking at, you'll see. The biggest one, or at least one of the bigger ones, is the spiral roving, which is the little bands on the cat one that go around the pleats, and the pleats are the filtering element flaps. Now, the cat filters are typically larger as well. If you get a Napa version of the 1R0749 cat filter, fuel filter, it's usually much smaller than the cat one. Now, if it's a bigger filter, it's going to be able to hold more and have a longer filter life. Now, not only the roving or the spiral rovings on the filter there to prevent bunching, this is what bunching is. This is an AMSOIL filter. You can see the pleats over time will start to stick together or at least bunch up, and that reduces the filtering efficiency. There's also little acrylic beads the cat puts between the pleats, and that keeps them from bunching as well. And you do not want bunching. This is a cat filter cutaway. You can see that this one actually had a spun main bearing. It wasn't the filter's fault. The filter did catch a lot of the metal, but of course with a spun main, the engine's pretty much shot. And you can see there was no bunching on this filter, even though it had some time on it, because of the spiral roving and the acrylic beading. You can see the acrylic beading towards the left and the right sides of the filters, kind of where on the ends of the cutaway there. And it's very important. You do not want bunching, and the reason is, as it bunches, no oil's getting around the flaps that are contacting each other. So what does that do? That increases the filtering differential of the unfiltered and the filtered oil. And what that does is, pretty much all oiling systems have a filter bypass, and once you get to a certain filtering bypass pressure, it'll actually just bypass the filter, which means now you're just running unfiltered oil through that engine. Now, this is a Donaldson filter, and it's the same one that I showed in the beginning of the video, and this filter is actually collapsed internally. You can see all the pleats are bunched together, and I'll show you what the internal of this filter look like. Now, it's sent debris into the engine due to it collapsing, and of course, you do not want that, because that means that contaminants are getting into the unfiltered side, and this one came in because it showed no oil pressure on the gauge. That's because the filtering element got stuck in the oil ports. Now, one thing that I've noticed over the years, and I've cut open a lot of oil filters looking for metal or contaminants or things in the engine, it's a cheap way to do it, and this is a cat oil filter cutter, is that the cat filters are much harder to cut through. It takes a lot more passes than, let's say, a Donaldson or a Baldwin filter, and I always thought the cases were a lot thicker, and that's what caused them to take so long to cut through. and actually measured a Donaldson and a Cat version of pretty much the same filter. And to my surprise, they weren't really hardly any difference as far as thickness on the steel cases themselves. It was maybe a couple thousandths difference. But the Cat ones obviously are using a much tougher steel on the outer case. And to me, that seems important because if you're driving down the road, maybe a rock hits your filter. If you're running a cheaper filter, maybe a Donaldson or whatever, maybe that'll rupture or poke a hole in that filter, whereas if it was a Cat, maybe it wouldn't have. Now, that's not to say that that happens all the time. That'd be very rare. But maybe if you're running a lot of rock roads, or if this is an equipment engine that you're filtering oil on, you might want to look at just the Cat ones just due to the case difference. And I think the case toughness is very important to the filter itself. Now, going back to this cutaway here, one of the other things other than the spiral roving that you'll see on the filters difference is the center section. And you can see on the Cat ones, it's a black synthetic material. It's actually a nylon centerpiece, unlike the other ones which have a metal or aluminum centerpiece. And the reason Cat does that is because the center section of the filter is the clean side. Now, you might be thinking, wasn't nylon kind of weaker than a metal one? Well, Cat's reasoning for this is during the manufacturing process, or if the filter were to collapse or something, you don't want metal on the clean side of the filter. So let's say if there was, for some reason, a small amount of manufacturing dust from the center section or a little piece were to break off, Cat doesn't want that to be metal going through your bearings. They'd rather have it be a more delicate material like nylon that's going to do a lot less damage than metal would. And you might think, oh, well, metal would never rupture or collapse. This is the insides of that Donaldson filter that had collapsed earlier. You could see, even though it is a metal center section, it still ruptured, and it still sent a lot of material through that engine. So now you have the pleat material and you have some metal from the filter itself being sent into the engine. And in my opinion, that's not really a good thing. I've never seen the center section of a Cat collapse like this. Now, of course, I haven't seen much of that on other filters, but this is just one example. So is the Cat filter really worth the extra money? Well, that's your call. If it's a business truck, which is most of what these trucks, or maybe an RV, it's your only RV, I would say, in my personal opinion, if I had a Cat engine, I would put Cat filters on it. I typically put the manufacturer brand filters on my personal vehicles for the same reason, that those filters were designed for the engine by the manufacturer. Now, Donaldson or Napa, they make filters that fit the same specs as the old filter that the manufacturer produced, but they aren't actually designed for that engine. They'll work, of course, and they'll filter, but in my opinion, they're not as efficient and they're not as robust and long-lasting as the manufacturer one, particularly in the Cat's case, because the Cats, not only they have the spiral roving, which keeps the pleats from bunching, they also have the acrylic beads between the pleats, which keep them from bunching as well. They have the nylon center. They have a stronger case. Not only that, your engine's yellow. You should have a yellow filter. I hate seeing a red filter or a white filter or whatever, pink or orange colored filters on a completely yellow engine. It just doesn't look right. You know what I mean? So maybe you want to save some money on your filters. There's plenty of them running out there that run Donaldson or Fleet Guard or Baldwin, and they don't have issues. I'm not saying that all those other filters are junk. I'm just saying, in my opinion, the Cat filters are worth a little bit of extra money, okay? Hope you enjoyed the video.